All right, hello everyone. It is episode 12 of Away the Hops podcast. We're here with Ed from Elder Beer Cafe. Hello, how are we doing? You good?
I'm very well.
Good. We're grand. Excited to try some new beers and.
I like cracking selections.
Yes, Deya, and then a Geuze, and then we have the barley wine as well.
Yeah,
Which
from St. Mars.
just said before, I've never had one before, so it's going to be a first for me. Which I shouldn't be saying that if I'm a craft beer Instagram page. I should have tried everything. But I haven't. But yeah, do you want to introduce yourself and Elder and?
Ed. I opened Elder Beer Cafe in November last year, which was a very optimistic move, obviously. I signed the lease when our Prime Minister said it was going to be over by Christmas, back in September. And but in spite of that, it's gone really well. And we've just been kind of slowly opening, started off as a bottle shop, and slowly being allowed to do more and more things.
Yeah, fantastic. And how long has the beer garden been?
Beer garden, I think that was 7, 8, 9 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And then inside for a few weeks now, I think it is, just like in accordance with the rules and that.
Yeah. And we've got good weather today, so it's nice and warm. No rain making noise on the thing, so it's all
No,
good.
exactly.
But yeah, should we crack open the first one?
Yeah, so this is Scene from Deya, and we really like Deya. We get basically every one of their beers, and I guess the reason I sort of decided to do that is you don't tend to see them a lot up here, and they kind of just, I think every beer they make is just immaculate, like so balanced. They got the water chemistry right down, yeah. And I think for a while they were very underrated, and now I think everyone knows about them. So, yeah.
And they obviously do the bigger cans, which I think interests a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I
Exactly.
for one would probably advocate more for the 330 cans and craft beer, because you go to a bottle shop, it's a tap room, and a lot of the tippers you could get in like 2/3 quarters, while you rarely see that in cans, and I guess it makes sense probably from a business wise to put them in 440s, and everyone knows your branding and things like that.
Yeah.
In 440s, but
I think it's just a coolness thing. I think that's the 330s aren't cool anymore. Maybe they'll make a comeback. But I remember seeing like Verdant IPAs in 330s, and to think back to that now, it seems weird. I think the distinction is because 330s are a bit like pop, so people like want to differentiate themselves. I think so.
Because we had the comment of like maybe use 330s for like tippers and extra strong things, like so have like tiny tippers, or even if people are releasing quads. I think sometimes 440 can be a bit of a chew, and by the time you've got to the end of it, it might be getting a bit too warm, and that's kind of the kind of downside, I suppose, of it. But I think with some of the Deya ones, some of them are super crushable, like 500 just like flies past it. You're done after that point, really. But yeah, in terms of like, obviously you said you opened and all kind of everything's been like under scrutinous eye of the government at the minute, and can't really get away with too much. How has the reception been of being on Chilly Road and I suppose the whole of Newcastle, because it's getting like a really good craft scene here? How do you stand out, and how has the challenges been?
To be honest, when we got plunged into sort of second lockdown in November, I wasn't too optimistic. I had 3 staff that I wanted to put on full time, and because we were just a shop, I couldn't do that. And obviously they've got to pay their rent and stuff like that. So that's kind of like my priority, just making sure they're all right and that. But as a shop, paying rent on a full space is a bit difficult. It's a bit difficult to sort of make ends meet in that. But now that we opened the beer garden, and we were just like full every single night on like a Wednesday night.
That's cool.
And it's class. I mean, I thought that maybe be some people that was maybe just being cautious and stay at home, but I think everyone's just buzzing to get back out.
It's been cooked up inside for
that's it.
Yeah, man.
That's it. And also we were quite lucky as well, because we've got a big beer garden, and some pubs don't have any beer garden at all, and so that's been quite good. And the fact that it's private as well, and not like kind of a kind of street thing. So yeah, it's been really good.
So do you get more groups, or do you get couples in because it's a bit more secluded?
It's a bit of everything, really. It is honestly a bit of everything. Obviously, we've got to limit things to like 6 people at the moment. And you got some people that are like, oh, you know, we want to bring a football team down, and there's like 20 of us, and I'm just like, sorry, mate. So what if we all sit on separate tables? And it's like, it doesn't really work like that, man. I know you're going to be in England. It's just, it's a tough one because like I want to do exactly the same thing. I want to bring like 20 of my mates down and have a good time and stuff. But yeah, it's just been everything. Some people just come in on their own, bring their laptop, do a bit of work or do a bit of drawing or whatever, which is quite cool. And obviously we're open from 11 a.m. and people come in and get coffees and that. So yeah, it's a range really.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
You alluded to how you kind of obviously your opening is impinged by lockdowns, and like when you started as a bottle shop, are you getting closer to your initial vision of Elder Beer Cafe, or are you slowly kind of just like iterating and getting to that vision?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm kind of one of these people that's like automatically quite optimistic, probably to a detrimental degree, and you know, like when I was first thinking about this like a couple of years ago, I was thinking bottle shop, that'd be cool, and then I found this premises and I was like, actually this could be like a cool kind of Belgian style bar where you can get sort of light bites and it's just like sort of like chilled out, and people are drinking bottles and cans because people don't really do that in bars in the UK. People want a pint, you know, which we've got as well, but I thought it'd be cool because you can have like, you know, hundreds of beers and you can't have hundreds of lines and stuff like that. But really it's just kind of evolving, and right now things are kind of what I imagined, but now I've just got so many more ideas that we could do with the space because, you know, it's a good space, it's in the middle of Heaton, you know, we can put gigs on, maybe cinemas, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity, things that I'd never really thought of before. My staff are kind of, they're a creative bunch, and they're always like, you know, pitching ideas. I was like, that'd be amazing, you know. Like one of my staff members is Tom. He's an artist, and he was just like, let's just do an exhibition, you know. Like you can even do it outside because it's sheltered, and so you can organise that, and that'd be cool. So yeah, I think it started off as one thing, and now it's morphing into all sorts of things. So
I think having that ability just to change and kind of do what you want, I suppose, is really good and unique, and there's not many places that probably would do that, which is, it gives it even more of a uniqueness to it, which hopefully drags in more people, and the more people that know about you, the better, I suppose, isn't it, really? You've also done, well, I think, has it been, or is it coming up, the Elder and Flint?
Oh yeah, we did that the bank holiday Sunday just gone,
right? Okay,
and then we did it yesterday as well, and I think we're going to try and do that every Sunday, and maybe a bit more, so we'll see how it goes. But it's just good. I mean, they're a small place, they don't have much seating. We've got lots of seating, but we don't really have a kitchen, so it just works out. And you see that kind of thing a lot in Leeds, Manchester, Brighton, you know, places teaming up like that, and you don't really seem to see it much up here in terms of like dining. So yeah, so I just thought, you know, why not? It'd be cool. I get to eat pizza every Sunday.
Great pizza as well.
Yeah, it's spot on.
It's
absolutely spot on.
So yeah, talking about kind of, I guess, as a scene, I guess kind of craft beer lends itself to collaborations, and I guess it's more of some would argue it's an art form, I guess, which lends itself into like what you're saying about events, and that exhibition is really nice. Struggling to think of a question from that point, but
would you kind of like to just have a brewery around, or go to a brewery and either have like a big tap takeover here, or would you like to go and be like, hey guys, like, can we brew a beer with you, like someone who's a bit cool, and like
well, the latter point, we've got something in the pipeline, can't really announce anything yet.
Alright,
but there's a couple of breweries we're looking to do something with, and I've done a bit of home brewing in the past and stuff. So
nice.
And
anything good?
Mostly saisons. I don't know if you like saisons, but like I love saisons, and kind of like mixed firm stuff. That's kind of what I want to do, really.
So is your style more continental than on taste? Because you were talking about a Belgian style bar.
Yeah.
And then
well, I think more the Belgian style bar thing is more just a kind of relaxed table service thing. So even post-COVID, we'd like to do table service. We'd like to have the option, rather than like a traditional pub where everyone's like stacked up at the bar. You know, I think kind of nice every time I've been to Belgium. You could stay sat at your table talking to your mates rather than like trying to catch a bartender's eye.
Yes.
And I was here first, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was kind of the idea of that. In terms of beer styles that I like basically every style, as long as it's not too wacky or sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not into like marshmallow in a beer, and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's actually hard to do well. I think it's a certain. I think people think it's easy because it's just like a dessert, but I think it's really hard to get all those things in balance.
Yeah.
And I also quite like, the idea of like beer being like a local thing, so locally produced barley, stuff like that, rather than some kind of fruit pulp that's like flown 3,000 miles across the world to get put in this beer. But yeah, I guess that's just my own preference. But I do love classic British styles. Like I love a bitter. And I think the one thing I'd change about this place, if I could, can't, we haven't got the space, is to do cask. So we only got 2 keg lines on, and we might get a Linda for events and stuff. But I love cask beer, I love cask bitter, cask oatmeal stout, like all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I like all sorts of beers.
Is that where your kind of beer quest started? Was it all cask, or were you a bit of a lager kid when you?
I was never actually. I'm never a lager kid actually. I never had a phase where I was, in my teens drinking Fosters or anything like that. Yeah. As I think it's most people's route into beer, but I was drinking like not even like good cask, like cask imitation, like Tetley's and John Smith's and stuff like that. Yeah. That was my thing. And then Guinness actually was probably the first beer that I had, and I was like, oh my god, flavour. Yeah. And then I kind of just went from beer to beer and stuff. And it was actually a pal of mine that I went to school with, and he was homebrewing loads when he was 16 and stuff like that. And you can't really get alcohol when you're that age. So so it's like, oh, this guy's song is amazing, and we just drink his homebrew and that, and he really got me into beer in a big way. We lived together and brewed together and stuff, homebrew together. So that's kind of how it started, and I guess trips to different places inspire you in different ways and that. But I think it's a weird one. I think a lot of people start the beer journey with lager, then they go away from lager, and then they try all this wacky stuff, and then they come back to lager. And I just skipped the first step. But really, after saisons, imperial stouts, triple IPAs, I want a lager. Like that's the thing. Yeah. I got so into like German lager because it's just perfect. Yeah. that's the thing. That's why it took over the world. It's
got good like differences as well in it. Like there's not everything is the same, and I think with quite a lot of the mainstream English lagers like the Carlin and things like you can get like Fosters and stuff. Yeah. It's pretty much the same thing. Whereas different regions do different, even mini styles and super malty, and it's all different. But when we started drinking, I don't think we were that fussy about anything. It was whatever we could kind of get our hands on.
Exactly. Whatever the parents had lying around.
Pretty much.
But I guess into pubs, I guess you all started on lager, and then kind of obviously Wild and big brewery up here always had Wild and Gold and cask and that sort of thing. And playing a lot of cricket out in the villages and that sort of thing, you could only really get kind of cask. So that's kind of, I guess, where my kind of palate evolved into more flavourful beers. Yeah. But does your taste, your preference influence what you sell?
Absolutely. If I don't like it, I don't want to sell it. Because if someone asks me, what do you think of this? I can't lie to them, And the thing is, there's like 3,000 breweries in the UK. We've got maybe a capacity of 300 bottles and cans. Like we could have 1 in 10 of every single brewery, and like one beer from each, if you see what I mean. From 300 breweries, so we don't do that. And I think any time you've got a selection on offer, you are curating it, and you can either do one or two things. You can either curate it in a way that makes the most money, and I guess if I was doing that, I'd probably be doing more of the marshmallow, like triple fruited, like quad Geuze or something like that. But that's not really what I want to drink, and I don't want to have to lie to someone and tell them that it's good. And I think customers respect the fact that you can be passionate about something. You can be like, this is mint, like you really like this and stuff, and maybe they'll ask me for some kind of wacky beer, and I'm like, we don't have that, but we've got this thing that's really nice, and then they'll come back the next week being like, oh, I had that Boon Creek and it was amazing. And so I think I definitely am pretty sort of controlling about like beers that I like, and sometimes I don't necessarily get a chance to try them all before they come in. So sometimes they come in and I'm like, it's not really for me, maybe I'll see what else that brewery does or whatever. So, but
I think that's good, isn't it? A good bit of personality to it.
100%. I think it's also, I guess, builds into your environment, your culture, which you're trying to, if that's the right phrase, to build around other beers. So actually, you're only selling things which you like and you actually know a lot about and you're interested in. And it's similar, I guess, to a restaurant. They if you like a fine dining restaurant, a lot of the chefs there will cook food which they enjoy, and they're producing some of the best food out there. So why not sell some of the best beer out there to your taste and be able to give your customer that kind of journey around and tell them a story about it and why you like it.
Like your local Italian restaurant, they're very passionate about their food, and if they wanted to make loads of money, they'd sell fried chicken. Like they would. It's the milkshake IPA of fast food, I guess. I'm not into it, but there's 3 shops within a few hundred meters of this place, so it must be popular. And that's the thing. I think there's no reason you have to do stuff. Well, I think if you end up doing stuff just for money or just for profit, then you've kind of, I don't know, you can't have passion in it. And I think a lot of the time your customers will see that and they won't respect it. So that's it.
I think we would do the same thing if we ever try to do something like this, where we kind of put things out that we were like, oh well, yes, I would drink 100% of everything on here, until the student comes around, sneaky 20 quid bottle of vodka for a litre or whatever. No, I'm kidding. It's a really good way to do it, and I think, well, hopefully it's going to transpire into a bit of the pubs as well. I think cans and having some nicer things behind the bar is going to be a thing, because
absolutely
more people out of none have probably tried craft or a more expensive kind of like premium version of beer or wine or any kind of spirit, and I think it can only be a good thing for what we're going to get in the on-trade as well. And I think it's kind of for championing you guys and all the other bottle shops that are kind of around the country for actually setting up and really stepping up through lockdown, which is really, really good. Do you feel the same? Do you think something like that's going to happen, or?
I think it's already starting to happen. You go to a country pub in the middle of nowhere and they've got Punk IPA, they've got Gamma Ray or something like that, and I think it's mint. I think a lot of people put down BrewDog, but if you're in that country pub and all they've got is Foster's, John Smith's or Punk IPA, you're picking Punk IPA, aren't you? So and it's a good beer. So I think it's only a good thing, really, and because I think it's interesting when you kind of try to find like craft beer, because obviously every big brewery is going to try and make something that could be sold as craft beer. Put a colourful logo on it, colourful label on it and stuff, and they'll try and dupe you. But really, what craft beer is about to me is, or good beer in general, it's just uncompromised, and it's just like, it's about flavour. And if it costs a lot to put that amount of hops in, or to use this kind of yeast or correct your water treatment and stuff like that, and then that's what it costs, and you have to pay people to make it. And but hasn't really answered that.
So good.
I just asked a highly controversial question, which I might save.
Go on.
I'll save it till we've opened at least 2 more beers.
I think I know where you've been going with it. Does it begin with a T, the company?
T? No. Oh, right, yeah. One of them does,
yeah. We've had a kind of discussion in the past and kind of try to keep it short, but all the new Tesco craft and that kind of world, and I think it's we need a specific episode, I think, for that, where we can just unleash what we really think.
But I've got a question, so I'll save it.
Okay, right. Should we? I mean, are we happy with the day? Do you want to pop onto the?
Let's.
Should we move into the
let's
unknown
let's
world
move
for
on to
me.
the next one,
Yeah.
which is barley wine. This is probably, I don't know, there's maybe a few candidates that I can think of as the best beers that we've had in here, but this is very, very high up on the list. St. Mars are this brewery in Sheffield that they brew a lot of Belgian stuff, which is, it's quite niche basically. I mean, if you're going to start a brewery, you brew pale ales and IPAs and nothing else, and you make loads of money.
Yeah.
But the fact that they are just brewing like loads of Belgian stuff, like some trad English stuff like this, is just like, you know, it's what they want to do, and I think that's just really class. And also, when you're brewing these styles that are actually really quite obscure, you said you never had one like, and you know, you kind of, you know, maybe someone has come to their brewery and they like the brewery, and then they've come for the IPAs or the Belgian stuff or whatever, and then they have this, they see this is on offer, and you're kind of educating the consumer and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess I'd describe it somewhere between a Belgian quad and an Imperial Stout, something like that. So it's 9%, which, if you believe it, it's actually like not that strong for a barley wine.
Yeah.
Some of them are 10, 11, 12%. And yeah, we were blown away when we first tried this, and I think probably I've had cans warm, and I think they're slightly better than cold cans. So, but I guess it'll open up.
I quite like that actually. Like for the first sip of ever having one, I mean, good smell before, a little bit licoricey, chocolatey type style in there, which is where it comes from the stout. But yeah, I kind of had reservations. I was like, I don't know what to think, but now I'm like, yeah, it's really nice.
That's it. I think it's just interesting seeing these kind of old English styles coming back, because I think a lot of them died. A lot of them sort of died down after like the wars, like a lot of our culture, like food and beer. Like we were making lambic style beer, you know, before like the First World War, and then no more. Yeah. So it's I mean, can you imagine if you had like lambic breweries, like old school lambic breweries in the UK? That'd be amazing. But
that'd be cool, man. Because I mean, there's people like what's the Trappist? Tint Meadows.
Oh yeah.
They've done like a kind of Trappist ales, the only UK trap, which is absolutely banging. Like I think I described it on our Instagram as like, you drink it and you just immediately want to fall back into a leather chair and just smoke a cigar with a whiskey by the fire. Exactly. That's like where it kind of took me to. Like,
exactly. I mean, this style is not necessarily a summer style. It's very. I mean, I think we might have got. I think we released it in, I don't know, February, March or something like that. We've been hoarding it. Because we want personal stash.
Nice.
And we're gonna start selling it again at Christmas, because we've kept enough back for that. But yeah, it is very much a kind of comforting kind of, got that kind of booziness to it. Yeah. And it's very, very rich. Yeah. But I also think very drinkable and very agreeable. It's not as kind of roasty or as aggressive as like maybe in some Imperial Stouts or something like that. And I think barley wine is kind of apt because it's kind of, there's something kind of fine about it, if you see what I mean. Yeah.
I'd definitely be going back to it, but later in the year. I don't know what your experience with barley wine's been, but
I mean, this is 10 times better than the last one I had. The reason I'm not so sure for about 3 years is because the last one I had, it just tasted like alcohol, and you could tell it's more of a wine like style than a beer. And it was, I think I got 2 mouthfuls into it. So I can't be dealing with this.
Fair enough.
And which is why I'm not going back to them, but actually really pleased you've chosen this, because it's. I've not always been a big fan of dark beers, but just like Christmas gone, kind of made a real big effort to get into stouts and porters and things, and I've loved every single one of them. Just the complexity behind them and the different flavours you get.
That's it, and it's all about the malt. You know, in the industry at the moment, it's all about hops, and I think the malt sort of gets put by the wayside a little bit. And when you can find a brewery that really knows their shit about malt, then I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, I've had some good porters and stuff and stouts. Kind of, I mean, once it's about April time, I usually kind of chill on them unless I'm buying like a box and it comes in a box from a brewery, for example. And I usually try and go for something a bit lighter, hit the Geuzes and the alike. But as soon as it comes back time, I'm definitely going to be looking at this brewery, because you say they do like quite similar, like. Obviously not their style all the time, but they'll do a bit more of the...
They've got more of the pale Belgian stuff, the kind of blondes and triples and things like that. Cool. But they also do really good IPAs, but inspired by Belgian traditions. So One thing they do a lot is use a cool ship.
Okay.
Do you know what a cool ship is?
No,
It's like it's a kind of traditional method of like cooling wort when it comes out of the kettle, basically, before you put it in the fermenter.
Okay.
Nowadays it's like plate chiller. It's essentially like mechanically chilled. But this and all Geuze use this kind of open fermenter. It's just a big bath. They just spray the hot boiled wort, into this bath. But the fact that it's open to the air means that microbes can get in, and you kind of basically every beer you put through there becomes like a mixed fermentation beer.
Oh, cool.
And it's kind of the reason it's interesting, I think, is just because it's got like there's this sort of wine term called terroir, which is basically of a place, and certain places will have a certain sort of like microbe distribution. So you've got hundreds of things that will literally jump in this hot sugary liquid, and they will change the character of the beer, and you end up getting a very unique beer, basically. And they do. I don't know if they've done it with this one, but they've done it with their like pale ales and IPAs, which is, I don't think there's anyone else in the country really doing that. There's a lot of places in the country that are trying to make Geuze, basically trying like imitation lambic, and they're doing it the traditional way with this method using the cool ship. But I think I might be wrong, but I think these guys are the only ones doing it with like so-called clean beers or like modern beers. Yeah.
That's kind of cool. That kind of like it's like a farmhouse type thing, isn't it? Like where different like cheeses would come from, and everyone would have like their own strain.
Well, same with I guess with modern day craze through lockdown and sourdough and all that sort of thing. It's the whole fermentation as well. The implementation of vegetables and fruit is becoming so big at the minute, and it's I think it makes really interesting flavors and styles, and I think I'm learning so much about beer the way it's brewed. Didn't realise.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a phrase in brewing. It goes, brewers make wort, yeast makes beer. So brewers can only make a wort, which is they can only extract a sugary liquid from the grains and hop it with whatever. But then once it goes into tank and you add your yeast is then turning that into beer, and you can if you change your yeast, that has, I think, the most effect on the flavour of the beer. The Geuze Boon we're going to have next, could have been a pale ale if only it didn't have this kind of crazy mixture of yeast and bacteria and stuff. And I think once you get to a point where a market is kind of a food market is kind of flooded, if you're willing to experiment with yeast and bacteria and that will really set you apart. And I think there's a lot of breweries just like using kind of cheap dried yeast that's just consistent. It doesn't impart any character whatsoever, but then it ends up just tasting very similar to every other brewer's beer. And one thing that's happened in the US, and which I think is a good model for how the UK market's going to go, is that every single brewery has like really honed their own house yeast, and because that is really the only way to set yourself apart.
So they're like spending more money on the science behind it is where they're
kind of. I mean, just kind of selecting a flavour profile that works for you. I mean, there's the kind of standard yeast is Saccharomyces, and but within that, there's a whole family of yeasts. There's all sorts of stuff, and there's not even just that. There's like stuff that basically isn't even yeast. There's like bacteria, basically. Lactobacillus being one of them, and that's what people use to make sours. It's what is the main culprit in sourdough, and there's all sorts of stuff. And I think at the moment, certain, I don't know, obviously it's a growing market, but I think things are getting slightly flooded in certain areas of the market, and people who are using yeast to differentiate themselves are really helping themselves out. In fact, there's a restaurant in Denmark called Noma, and they've won like restaurant, world's best restaurant for God knows how many times, 3 Michelin star, and they basically pioneered fermenting stuff, fermenting vegetables, fermenting fruits, and using lacto fermented raspberries, and they'll dry them out and then shave it on a pasta dish or something crazy like that.
Sick.
And you can't get that flavour anywhere else in nature. It's only the mixture of lactobacillus and sort of raspberries that will make that flavour. So you've got a whole other arsenal of flavours that no one's ever tried them before. So and look, all these Michelin restaurants are copying Noma basically.
No,
because if you want to have a unique style, if you want to have new flavours, you need to look at yeast. But yeah, that's why I really respect breweries that are looking at yeast and bacteria and fermentation to basically hone their style, because I think they're ahead of the game, really.
Yeah, I think you can always see that trend happening, because for me, I've seen, we've probably all seen so many sour IPAs and things like that coming out, and just so many. Yeah. It looks like they are, like you say, breweries are starting to experiment and, okay, how can we take this beer to that next level, or almost develop that kind of our own in-house culture to make our own taste profile. And I think a lot of breweries we drink have already their unique taste profile. Like Wylam is a prime example of that. You know exactly when you're drinking a Wylam beer, just that. I don't know what it is, that lingering kind of.
Well, they've got their own house yeast. Yeah. They've got their own house yeast that they crop and stuff. And not many breweries do that. There's that, and as well, I think the way they choose to hop as well does give them a certain style.
Yeah, but even they released that sour. When we had them on the podcast, they were talking about having their own kind of mixed firm kind of entire section we were building when we were there. So I'm actually kind of see that the breweries already diversifying it, and I think the sour IPAs we're seeing released at the minute, which I'm very skeptical about, because they're not necessarily the best beers I've ever drunk, but I'm seeing them getting better and better, and it's probably almost a gateway into a whole new avenue of kind of flavours and tastes, and even possibly new genres of beer, which I think would be really exciting. I like moving away from tippers and dippers, because I think it's so saturated, that market.
Yeah. Well, even the kind of New England style that emerged through yeast. It's a yeast that will basically, instead of dropping out, it stays in solution, which is why it's cloudy, and it also produces all these kind of tropical fruit flavors. And the way the yeast interacts with the hops, essentially the hop compounds kind of stick to the yeast, and they're kind of left sort of floating in suspension. So when you drink the beer, because it's cloudy, because it's got those kind of hop compounds that are kind of latched onto the yeast, which is staying in solution, you basically get like hop compounds directly onto your tongue, and that's why it's so hoppy. So it has the innovation has come from the yeast there, and I think a lot of people maybe miss that. Well, a lot of the brewers don't miss that, but a lot of consumers maybe miss that, and they're just like, oh, it's this hop that makes it special. And it's really about the yeast actually.
Really championing that through. I mean, I loved how Wylam were taking it so seriously, because they were like, it's literally going to be a hermetically sealed chamber, and it's going to be like nothing's getting in. And before you go in, you're going to get sprayed down all stuff, which is fantastic. Which is taking it to the nth degree. But in terms of yeast, I'd like to ask you, because obviously Crick or however people pronounce it, there's so many different ways. Where do you stand on kind of that in the flavouring, and are you a fan, or is it not for you?
There's a brewery in Northumberland, Rig and Furrow.
Yeah.
One of my favourite brewers. Absolutely amazing. But some of their stuff that is clean is like, I think their house IPA and their house pale ale is Quebec yeast. I also can't pronounce it, and I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think everyone's pronounced it differently.
Like, how many syllables does it have? That's what I'm like. But yeah, and they make some really, really good beer, and you kind of wonder what their kind of house style is, and I think it is that yeast. And the only other beers I've only ever seen kind of sort of mixed culture things that with Quebec yeast, and they're making some clean beers, some hoppy beers, some hop forward beers with a kind of farmhouse Quebec yeast, and I think that's really, really interesting. It really gives them their own kind of style. I think it's good. I think I had a beer from Cloudwater and Wildcard, Big Betty it was called. I think that was a dipper with fig yeast, and I think for me it didn't quite work out. I don't know if it was just like the fermentation temperature or whatever, but like it wasn't quite clean enough, and it was a bit sort of muddled, and I thought it was a nice beer, but it didn't really, none of the notes really sung, and I think it's really hard to get right. You know, if you spent your whole time brewing with this one yeast and you know how it works, then you switch to another yeast thinking, oh, I'm going to make this beer, and this yeast is going to make it, a little bit different. It changes absolutely everything. It changes absolutely everything, and I think it's a whole, in my field, it's good because it's experimenting, but it's not automatically better if you use that yeast. Basically, you have to really know how it works and what sort of temperatures to ferment it at and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's a whole different ball game, and I think that's really where I think the industry, that's where the massive gap is. In kind of knowledge in flavour. And if you look at the US, like, even breweries like Trillium are doing like mixed firm stuff, and they're famous for the hoppy IPAs and stuff, and they're doing loads of mixed firm stuff. So I think breweries that get ahead and do the mixed firm stuff first, they are going to be, leading basically.
And obviously it's a bit of trial and error, but because like I say, like sour IPAs over the last year, some of them have been okay, and like personally for me, some in taste wise have not been great, and I think there's been a universal kind of feeling that it's there, but it's spiraling, getting better and better and better, and I hope things really take off from it. Really, I think it definitely could be a good thing.
I think just, I guess, a general comment around that is it's quite an interesting industry, craft beer in general, and the fact that you mentioned kind of Cloudwater and Big Betty, that Quebec dipper, was it dipper? Yeah. I think that was the first Quebec I had since we tried Shouting at Strangers on the Wildland podcast. We keep mentioning the Wildland podcast.
It was good.
But it was a hell of a beer, and I was actually a bit disappointed by it because I expected those big orange tones and that sort of thing. And it's probably one of the few industries, craft beer, where there's so much experimentation going on.
Absolutely.
That's actually released to the general population, because a lot of people actually brew this beer and think, actually, for me it's not quite right, or like it doesn't hit our profile of taste, but they still believe that there's going to be people out there who will enjoy it and will like it, so it's still pushed out there. I'm sure there's as many batches which are discarded.
Absolutely.
But it's actually quite really interesting to see that some which probably don't meet up to the brewer's expectations still get out there, and it does make for really interesting combinations.
Well, people are very forgiving of craft breweries because it's kind of an experiment, and I think that's, you kind of along for the ride. That's the thing. Like, ooh, I wonder how that works. Like, and I can give my opinion on whether that combination has worked or not. And it's not like you've got these like really honed beers that are just like commercially honed and then released. You're along for the experimentation process. But again, I really having said that, I really respect breweries that do dump like bad beer. Some breweries don't do it, but because they're trying to hit a bottom line, and like, fair enough, and I think maybe it's a privilege being able to like dump beer that doesn't doesn't hit like every expectation. But I think customers really reward you for that, because why would you want to drink something? Why would you want your customers to drink something that they don't have like the best time, and or maybe it's not a full representation of like what you want to do. They're just going to get a bad impression of you, and they're going to punish you for that, basically.
Especially in such a competitive market as well. Like you said, there's over 3,000 breweries in the UK, and most of them are tiny. Like you don't have your luxuries of, I guess, your Cloudwaters, your Wildlands, or the big breweries you've mentioned so far. I guess you could class Deya and all those are there. Like, they could probably take that risk of pushing out a slight, like, a beer which is 10-20% less than their actual standards, because they know people will go out and buy it, and they will, and we could sell it for £2 less, and they'll meet that bottom line. But other breweries, like, which is a beer we're drinking at the minute. Sorry, I can't remember the name.
Our finest regards.
I find, no, a brewery like this I've never even heard of. If they were to do that, they might really struggle. So which is where their quality needs to be top notch, and I guess there's some really knowledgeable kind of brewers behind it, so you know exactly what they're doing. But I'm saying it's such a big risk as well. I guess I'm probably going too far into the business line, but that's quite interesting.
In terms of breweries, because obviously I think we're quite blessed being in Newcastle at the minute. In terms of places where you can get craft, and the breweries that are kind of around in the northeast, even stretching as far down past like into Durham way and stuff with S43, I think they're really good. Have you got a favourite? Where do you buy from if you were to? It might be putting you on a spot here, but this is what we do.
So, do you mean like which
who would be a standout for you in brewery terms for a northeast? If someone's not had anything from like Leeds up, where would you go?
That's really interesting. There's obviously a natural something I'm kind of leaning towards, but I guess Wylam are good. They probably don't need any more help. And I think in terms of, maybe I'd say I don't know really. I think for hoppy beer, I think Almasty very, very underrated. Like not enough people have had Almasty across the UK, and they will, because I think people find good beer, and they're knocking out some absolutely amazing beer. They just released a Pilsner, which is really, really good, and a good price point as well, which I think is like another thing which is like the industry is really missing. But for an all-round brewery, I'd probably say Wigan Furrow. They're the most exciting brewery for me, because they're on a farm. They're using a lot of their own ingredients as much as they can. They're brewing modern styles. They're brewing like traditional British styles. They're brewing traditional German styles and traditional Belgian styles, and I just think the whole thing is amazing. Like, you can, if you send someone there, if you were to send any person from Leeds below, go to this brewery, you'll have a good time. That'd be Wigan Furrow for me, I think.
Well, I mean, we've been trying to get.
Well, Wigan Furrow been on the list. For
we contacted them a long time ago, and then obviously all this kind of stuff happened again.
To go up like the week lockdown.
Yes, it was pretty much like as soon as it came in, it was a bit of a nightmare, and the guys have been busy, so it's coming. It's coming. It's a part of the world that we love. Like, obviously being from Newcastle, we're going to really champion Northumberland. Like, it's such a class place to go, and we were away just over the weekend, just by the beach, just having laughs on it. It was class.
I've actually got one of their mixed firm sours.
So one with the berry, isn't it? The cow with the berry.
Oh yeah, the raspberry one.
Yeah, raspberry one, and I'm so looking forward to that.
They released one before that called Combine, which is a beer de coupage. It's like in French it means like a cut. It's cut, so it's two beers basically mixed together. So it's a lambic style beer, wild ale. I guess you can't call it lambic if it's not from Brussels, but like. It's basically a kind of lambic style beer mixed with a fresh hoppy beer, and that's a style that absolutely no one in the UK is brewing, and they should be. And we've got a keg of it in the shed. Actually, we're gonna whip that out this week, because they're out of the bottles. We got through so many of them bottles. Honestly, it is really interesting. These beers come out, and I'm like, why isn't everyone else brewing this? Because it's amazing. Not just for nerds like me, but like it sells really well. So
to find a niche corner, I think, in the market nowadays is quite like a massive little goldmine, isn't it? Because pretty much every other combination has possibly been done by somebody at some point down the line. If you find like a new strain of stuff, like, go to town on it, man. Like, because if it tastes good, then you're the only people doing it, and you're only going to be found as like, these guys did it first.
Well, I think a lot of people, a lot of brewers, they think, this niche is very expensive to make, and if we start trying to make this niche, we're only going to be able to actually make the beer in 4 years' time after it's aged for a suitable amount of time on wood. Do we have the space to have all these barrels? That's a whole fucking minefield, and you really have to be like obsessed with that style or to want to do that with your brewery, because it's a lot of investment. It's a lot of investment without a lot of payoff for the first few years. I think breweries, especially emerging breweries, as they're still more and more opening every year, they're looking for something which is they can get sort of more instant recognition.
Yeah.
But I think as breweries establish themselves, like Wylam for example, they are, experimenting with this kind of stuff. Rig and Furrow didn't even. It seems like they just did it straight off the bat. Like,
just went straight. Let's go for it.
I love that.
It's class.
So yeah, I really think that's where the gap in the industry is. I think some brews as well. Mills, if you've had anything from Mills,
Don't think so.
Mills are probably the brewery that I think that in 5 years' time everyone will be talking about Mills. And
where are they from?
They've been doing it for ages. They're in the West Country. I can't remember exactly where, but they're not far from Cheltenham, like Deya, where Deya is. I can't remember where they're from, but they're basically making lambic. They're making lambic and they're blending it. It is essentially Geuze. They can't put that label on it, but everything's done in the traditional way, like hyper traditional. Cool ship, aged hops. The whole thing, and they've just kind of said, right, we're happy with the size that we're at, and we don't want to expand at all. And the size that they're at is pretty small, and there's a lot of people that are like, please make more. That's the thing. But I think that breweries like that, and breweries that maybe have the money to do it, and Brewdog were ahead of the game with Overworks, and I think that is also going to be. Overworks, for me, I don't think it's really kicked off, but when you've got Overworks in supermarkets, I think, people are going to be like, oh god, this is amazing. And
we spoke to Andy, who works at Vault City.
Oh yeah.
And he used to work at Overworks, and he's a bit mixed on, isn't he?
Well, I think so. I think
we've had stuff from the past.
I've not been blown away by stuff from Overworks.
Yeah.
Especially given the investment Brewdog put in.
Yeah.
We're talking multi-million pound facility, hiring one of the lead head brewers from over in the States to come over to Scotland to brew this mixed firm beer. And I guess it's probably baby steps, isn't it? You're probably gonna until you kind of refine everything. Then it's going to be, you're not going to be producing your best stuff, and it's probably only a matter of time thinking about it. And it's probably the same for a lot of the breweries. Like, I've openly slated a lot of sour IPAs, and that's something which you mentioned before, but it's probably only a matter of time before they become big. And it's, I guess we just got to be patient. Like, not every beer we're drinking is perfect. But yeah, I think Overworks it's the first time I've heard it for a while, actually.
Yeah,
it might be an interesting one to watch.
I really think that they'll work out the kinks and people will reward them for that, and I think that they are very, very ahead of the game. They've got way more capacity than literally any other mixed ferm barrel program in the UK. And I don't know, I think what you like about Brewdog, obviously their market is supermarket on some level, but I just think it's only kind of a good thing getting great beer to as many people as possible. And we've seen a lot. If you go in the sort of craft section at a supermarket, you will see New England IPAs everywhere, and they're competing with the stuff that's maybe made not quite to the same sort of margin and sold at independent shops, not sold at supermarkets. And the same thing I think will happen with like sour beer, and I think Brewdog are one of these ones that I don't think it's completely compromised. It's not. They're not the kind of Fosters of the craft world at all. I think they're probably more, I don't know, Augustino of the craft world, or Timothy Taylor's or something like that. So I really think there's a lot of space in the market for that. It's interesting when you say sour IPAs, because there's a lot of the beers that come out every now and again, and we're like, this is the one that's going to take off and stuff. But there's so many beer styles that no one's brewing anymore. Black IPAs, I think maybe making a comeback, but the other ones like Brut IPAs, they're super dry ones. Everyone was like, this is the future of beer, and then no one brews them anymore.
I had a great one from Kona, which was a hibiscus brut IPA.
Oh, okay.
Really, really fantastic. Hibiscus really give like a nice lightness to it. And if you had a beautiful kind of summer's day to drink that on it, it really kind of went down super nice.
Absolutely,
it was fantastic.
Absolutely. But yeah, I wouldn't be so certain that sour IPA is going to kick off.
I'm
it's kicked off in the US though, to be fair. So I don't know.
The only one that I've
just
heard
hoping to gateway into something new, and
Yeah.
something kind of closer
No,
to
it's
probably
true.
something with your kind of mix with like Belgian styles,
Yeah.
like from the UK.
Absolutely.
Maybe just finding our own kind of our own style again. Would be really interesting.
exactly.
Something I think is interesting about the British market is like obviously we import loads of stuff from the US. Like everyone's brewing New England IPAs now, but in the US there's a lot of really really strong stuff because that's how you can get a lot of flavour in. It's how you can make the kind of hops balance with the malt, put more malt in, and everything is Imperial, Dipper, Quipper, whatever. In this country, that's not really how people drink. People don't drink, half a can of Dipper. People drink, 8 pints of 3.5% beer.
Yeah.
It's about in the UK. I think drinking is a lot more about session.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at someone like Deya, they've taken a New England IPA style and put it into I think the smallest package you can make. I think it's 5.2%, and that is basically a session strength beer, but it's got so much flavour that you get from an IPA or something.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they've been so successful. I don't think you can really just copy the American breweries making like 12% beers and things like that because our duty system means that they're going to be fucking well expensive. And also people want to drink 6-7 pints of the same thing. I think
So you find something you like, you tend to stick to it.
So that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
Although I think craft beer just does lead itself to that. Well, we mentioned experimentation already in terms of brewing, but in terms of tasting and drinking itself, we'd probably go to your free trade and get half pints of kind of different beers, and we try to try as much as possible because we may find that new favourite out there which we will come back to. But a lot of probably drinkers in this world rarely go back to it, and for me it's finding that beer which I want to go back to.
Exactly.
And tend to, and unfortunately they're not brewed all the time. So
but if you find that beer, if it's your first beer that you try that night, or your second beer that you try that night, and you're like, that's what I want to drink all night. I think that's what it's about. When I was working as a bartender at the free trade and all sorts of places, my favourite thing to hear was "Same again, please," and just like that's what I want. I want 5 pints of that, and it's like because they've just found, what they love.
Yes,
and
exactly,
and I think that's amazing. That's kind of, I think what beer is all about. It's just like, it's about sessioning something basically.
Yeah.
In the UK anyway. I mean, it's a weird thing because we've got imported American style in terms of double IPA. We've got an old English style that is kind of closer to a Belgian sort of thing, and then next we're going to be drinking.
Well, why not pop it over now?
Boon. Yeah, we'll pop it over now.
A good segue. You've done your own little
Exactly.
segue. That's fantastic. You're like the best guest.
And then, but it's this is 7%. It's not a weak beer. You can't necessarily session it at the rate that Brits drink. So, and this is because the Belgians will just have one of these, on their lunch break. From maybe there's some banker or something that just work and they're just having this on their lunch break, which is just not how we drink at all. We live for the weekend and we drink 8 pints.
It depends what industry you're in.
Yeah, this beer for me is synonymous with one person, and shout out to Dave Walker if you ever listen. He legendary barman, and this is his pretty much number one tipple apart from one of the beers. I can't remember, but I think it's owned by Stone Cold Steve Austin, called Three Skulls or something it's called.
Okay.
But anyway, he's always like, I used to go into his pub, the Purple Bear in town, a lot. Just be like, can I have something new? And he'd always be like, do you not want one of these first? And like kind of always like trying to start me on one of these because I suppose it's his favourite beer, but I'll let you introduce it a bit better.
This is probably, I don't know, I mean, Geuze, if you go into Belgium, you'll probably have been on like a Geuze journey.
We've not.
But
not.
Okay. Well, you should. If you're around Brussels, go to Cantillon, go to Driefonteinen, go to Utbeersel. I really like their beers. But this in particular is almost mass produced. It's very accessible. It's very cheap for what it is. It's a 7%, cork and cage beer that's mixed of 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old beers, all aged in wood the traditional way. And they sell this in Waitrose now.
Yeah.
That it just absolutely blows my mind that this kind of beer, is that accessible. And I think it is a bit of a kind of game changer that's not really been copied in the kind of craft world just yet. Kind of accessible mixed ferm beer like this.
Do you reckon because it's done so well and people go, you know what, I don't want to go near that because...
Yeah, well, no, maybe that's it.
It's going to be compared to something that's so good.
It's true.
Is this your first time trying this, by the way? Or?
First time trying this beer in particular.
Yeah. You've had Geuze before, though?
Yeah, I've had Geuze, I've had Lambics, and it's... I've not had many Lambics, but this is probably the best I've had.
It's on some level, it's kind of like entry level Geuze. It just like ticks all the boxes, and I think after you've had a super hobby dipper and a barley wine, the only thing that will touch your palate after those things is this. I think it's kind of like the most refreshing beer you can drink.
Yeah.
And it just, I think, because of the acidity, whatever you were drinking, if you went from, Geuze to dipper, you'd probably still be tasting the Geuze in your mouth. Like, it's so intense and so interesting, and so many places to go with it, even though they're kind of like, across all these Belgian Geuzeries, they all basically have the same malt. They all pretty much have the same hops and kind of quantity of hops. They've got the same sort of size barrel, but they all taste completely different because of the terroir and where they're based. And Cantillon's a very, really famous Geuzery, but they're in, kind of a polluted city, and that's what their terroir is. But it makes amazing good. I mean, honestly, I don't get it, but I think this is one of the things I think that's missing from the UK. Burning Sky released a Cool Ship a few years ago. That's their first kind of foray into it, and I think that'll get more and more popular. I don't think any brewery will ever make it as cheap as Boon or Lindeman's or someone like that. Maybe Overworks. I don't know what Overworks' plans are, but yeah, Mills is one that's trying to copy this, and I think Mills is more interesting than this, definitely. I think it's kind of a trade-off with this in terms of kind of how you blend it. It's kind of all about the blending, and and this is the weird thing, they brew the same beer, put it in those same barrels, and it just turns into something else, because that barrel has a slightly different yeast and bacteria build-up, and the air at that particular time of year or on that particular day was just like slightly different, and then that barrel of beer just turns out completely different to the other ones. And then there's a kind of art to blending the barrels, and I think that kind of variability is really, really attractive. I think it's really interesting, and the trade-off here with the kind of, I guess, the cheaper size of Geuze is they've chosen more young lambic, and young lambic's obviously cheaper because they haven't stored it for as long, and you get the kind of stuff that's older, maybe Driefonteinen. Their kind of house Geuze is absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's, I think the UK kind of market, I guess, industry could do with some of this affordable Geuze.
The taste profile is kind of there though. Like the thing that draws me in is the sherbetness, that comes right at the start. Like it just draws you in, and you go, okay, I'm not going to drink much else for the rest of the night. Just stay on this kind of style, because once you're in, you're in for the kind of long haul with it.
I mean, it's 7%, but you almost could session it.
It's on that cusp.
Yeah,
I said my uncle watched one of our first podcasts, and I think we said to someone it was sessionable used to be the 2.5% to 3.8, and
Yeah.
now sessionable can be anywhere towards like 6.5. Like it's quite a crazy scheme that's kind of just rolled out of proportions.
Yeah.
But that honestly is really kind of pushing the boundaries of where you could see yourself having a few. But I mean, to a session to someone could be 3 pints. A session to someone could be 10 pints. But the 10 pint is probably not a craft beer drinker. It doesn't drink anything that's above 4.5%.
No, that's it. Yeah.
That's
3.8 is the magic number.
Yes,
it's quite funny.
Yeah.
And you speak to customers like being a bartender, and you're like, oh, it's how strong is this one? Oh, it's 3.6. Oh, fucking piss water. I won't drink that. And then it's like, oh, 4.2. Bloody hell! I can't be drinking that. It's like 3.8. Nothing more, nothing less. It's pretty good. But I quite like that as well. That people know what they want, and they're just like, this is what I want, like, and this is what I'll drink for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I kind of respect that on some level.
There's my granddad was Stones. That was just his life until John Smith's came along. Then it was John Smith's.
Yeah.
Like, must have perfected the 3.8, 1, 2 or whatever. Yeah, bring it out that like. It's fantastic. Though. I love Geuze Boon, and it's all because of Dave Organ pushed me through, and I've tried so much more pre us having the hop guys, which is quite sad because I think if we put it out there, I know it's not like whatever we say goes, but I think if the more and more people that come up with something and go, oh look, this kind of style, or let's move to Belgium for a little bit and just do that, because there is some absolutely cracking beers that are out there from there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also a kind of historical style, and in the UK we used to brew this style, and maybe historians will agree with me or disagree with me, but I think that, you know, Britain actually taught the Belgians how to make lambic like hundreds of years ago. I think it's 400 years ago, something like that. And then we lost it. Same with a lot of styles like the blonde. We still kind of got a version of blonde now, but it's not the same as the Belgian blonde. And like barley white to quad and stuff. And I think it is a little bonkers for me. Just think, for me, this is like fancy beer, but to think that people were drinking this in the pub on cask like 400 years ago is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Isn't it?
You know, and this is what beer would be if they wouldn't recognise a kind of a clean lager or pale ale or anything like that. All beer was sour until Carlsberg discovered yeast in 1805 or whatever it was. So, yeah.
And I think it's fantastic, the stuff that you learn like through the history of and how beer's moved around. And I love going into a proper old pub, and when the pub says established like 1600 and something, I'm like, yes, this has got some really cool history to it, which is amazing. Like,
that's just a really interesting fact, really. I know, like, it's called, they have their own strain of yeast, and that's what produces their lager. But actually, to think that all beer was sour before that yeast was kind of invented or found.
Yes.
It's almost mind-blowing, isn't it, to think that a lot of what I guess we're drinking tonight was what people were drinking hundreds of years ago, and all these clean lagers, which I guess for us don't really taste of a lot, although there's some really good ones out there. It's
modern. It's a modern invention.
I've never got my head around that.
Yeah, it's probably been just made for the masses more and more towards the time that we're in, and that's how it kind of spiraled out. And I'm glad people have brought the craft world kind of back, and it is so strong. Like, it's never been as strong as it has been for now, and it's absolutely fantastic.
I think on some level you can kind of understand why after like hundreds of years of drinking like sour beer, probably stuff a lot more sour than this, you'd be like, I get through a box of Rennie a day drinking this stuff, like it's just so sour. Like, what's this new clean, like crispy stuff? That
it tastes so sweet compared to the like, wouldn't it? Like,
exactly. So I can kind of understand it, but it is kind of coming back in a circle. People, I think a lot of people who are into craft, maybe they got into it. You know, we've got some customers that have only been into craft beer for like 2 years, and they've sort of never heard of like a kind of a clear IPA like Sierra Nevada or something like that, and they just think all IPAs are hazy, and it's amazing to think that, but they'll go on their own journey, and they'll visit this at some point.
That's been great. Well, before we go though, we've got some quick fire questions.
Oh yeah.
So, straight off the bat, favourite hop profile?
Favourite hop profile? Bitter. Massively bitter. Yeah. I think having some kind of interesting sort of fruity flavors up front is very, very interesting, and that kind of draws you in. You get all that aroma, then kind of resinous in the middle, and then just really bitter.
Yeah,
it just makes you want to have another sip. You know, if it's not bitter and it's too sweet, you just be like, okay, I'll just sit with that. But it's super bitter. You're like, you know.
I'm quite similar to you. I like the old school hop West Coast IPA where it just attacks you.
Exactly.
And then it's got a good dankness to it, and you just that's what brought me to the beer.
Exactly.
Favorite style?
Favorite style. It's a tough one. Probably going to be saison. Because it kind of varies a lot, and it's got the whole historical element. Like, you know, saison has existed for longer than we've known what yeast is. So there is a kind of old school saison, which is actually sour, and then there's a kind of modern saison, which is saison de pont, and then now super modern craft saison is going back to that old style saison, like 300 years ago, and I think it's just the whole kind of spectrum there, all kind of trying to do the same thing, but with different knowledge, slightly different ingredients, and different techniques. I think it's absolutely amazing. And something about saison as well is so dry. The yeast that they use is so dry that and you know, you can hop it like super bitter, and it's just like, it shouldn't be a sessionable thing. It's like 6% or whatever. It's like your average saison, and but you just kind of really want to, like, can I just have like 6 liters of this? You know, that's me. Some people like turn their nose up at it, but like, I guess that's me. I just love saison.
If you were to have one beer for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oof, that's a good question.
We've had people say all sorts for this sort of stuff. When Timothy Taylor, Landlord, to Elvis Juice from Brewdog. So
Landlord is not a bad shout at all. I think I'd probably go with Augustina Helles.
Nice. That's a good choice.
It just it ticks a lot of boxes. It's so clean, and I can think of situations where I wouldn't want to drink Boon, for example, or I wouldn't want to drink a dipper or barley wine. At every time of year, at every occasion, I would drink Augustina. So it's probably that.
Fair. That's
and
a
it's
great
also quite agreeable. You can give it to any person, and they'll probably like it. So
fair. That's a good shout, man.
Before your last one, we missed one on here. If you were to introduce a complete newbie to craft beer, what style or what beer would you give them?
I think that's an interesting one. We've had that here, you know, when people are like, "Oh, I don't really drink craft beer," and I'm thinking, well, I'll probably just get a lager, but have you got anything else and stuff? And I'd be like, well, why don't you have a pint of Steady Rolling Man, like Deya Steady Rolling Man?
Fair.
And it's like this gateway drug because it's so perfectly made. It's kind of not an experiment at this point. They've honed it down, and it's just like so dialed in and so amazing. I think giving them something a bit wacky, maybe Boon would be a little bit too much and might sort of put you off, but I think Deya Steady Rolling Man is that kind of perfect kind of gateway into kind of hops, and it's just different to everything else that they probably would have had, but in a kind of accessible package, I guess.
Yeah. There is one more before the ultimate question.
Okay.
Apart from here,
Yeah.
where's the best place to drink in Newcastle?
Free trade.
Straight up, man. The view is exceptional, by the way.
It is exceptional.
If you don't live in Newcastle, you won't know where it is. But it's basically right at the bend of the Tyne, and it's on perfect position where you can just look straight down through all the bridges, all the quayside, Gateshead, everything. It's a fantastic place.
One of the best views in the country, I think.
100%.
And they've got a great selection as well. I mean, you can
fantastic.
find Cloudwater dippers on tap, but you can also find like 3.5% pale ales and bitters on
the range
on
is
cask
crazy
and stuff.
good.
It's amazing.
And then the last question. Would you like to do it? Would you like
No,
to
you love asking me so much.
What's your favourite meal deal?
Favourite meal deal. So this is at a place that does an official meal deal, right?
I mean, we've had a lot from just nuts to a KFC massive bargain bucket thing. Like, give me whatever your go-to is.
Well, here we kind of have what we call a Chili Road meal deal.
Okay.
And it basically consists of a pint of steady. And there's a falafel place down the road called Shawarma. It's really good. And they'll make you falafels, and they make the bread fresh as well. It's great.
Nice.
£3. Get one of those and a pint of steady. That's a Chili Road meal deal.
I like that meal deal. That
Well,
sounds good.
we'd have to try that out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. It's been fantastic. We've definitely learned a bit, and
learned so much.
we've enjoyed all the beers that you put on show.
Cool.
Really know your shit, man. It's cool. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for listening as well.
Yeah,
Cheers,
thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Thank you.